All right, so today we're going to look at user input. And what we want to do here is have the user type in some information, but we want to have that information be numbers. We're going to be able to add, subtract, multiply, divide, do all sorts of stuff with it. Okay, so in Python, we're going to have to think about how we ask for information and then convert it if necessary. So I'm going to type a little, a little setup here, a little theme. So a class had 5 tests this semester. Ask the student for their scores and save them in a list. Okay. And again, notice that I said 5 tests. We'd like to try to have things be open-ended, allow students to determine the number of tests they had. Maybe each teacher has a different number of tests. That's down the road. Okay. But for now, I'm just saying 5 tests. The next thing I want to do is create variables. And the first variable I want to create is a list. Where am I going to store those 5 test scores? Well, I'm going to store them in test scores. And by putting 2 square brackets there, the computer knows it's a list. All right. Next thing I want to do is I'll come down a little bit here and I will use a loop to ask the student for their test scores and store them in the list. Okay. All right. So what do I want to do here? Well, while I is less than 5, let's do it the right way. I is less than 5. What's I? I is just a little counter for us. All right, it's a way for us to keep track of how many times we go through the loop. So how about I equals 0? Because when the student starts the code, we have not typed in any scores yet. So I is 0. I is just a counter for me, right? While I is less than 5, what do we want to do? I want to ask them for their score. So how about score? That's just a variable name. You can call that X. You can call that unicorns. It doesn't matter. So score equals app dot get text input. And this information on the right-hand side of the equal sign, this is what we call, magic, right? These are procedures. These are instructions that the computer understands. So this is very specific to Python. All right. Score on the left-hand side is just something I typed in. That's what I created. I want to give the person a prompt. So how about enter your test score? Okay. And next thing I want to do is I want to say test scores, not append. Okay, so the list test scores on line 3 is empty. When somebody types something into this prompt, test scores will be appended with score. So whatever they type in on line 8, it'll go to line 9, we'll append it, and it'll be added to line 3. Okay, and then when we get through one round of the loop, we want to say I equals I plus 1. We want to add a number so that we can only get 5 scores. I don't want to enter 6 scores. I don't want to have this go on and on forever. So this will just limit it to the 5. Okay. And then when we're all done, I'll say print test scores. Okay. Maybe give the user a prompt and say, your scores for this semester were. Okay, that'll just be a little bit better for us. The other thing I'd like to do is maybe up here, just to let the person know, print you entered, just so we can make sure everything's working properly. Okay, so if somebody types in 50 for a test score, it'll go 50. Line 9 will print a 50. All right, so let's run this and let's enter a test score. Well, maybe I scored a 75. And then I scored an 80. And then maybe I didn't do too well. I got a 65. And then I got a 90. And then I scored like a 95. All right. Now nothing's going to appear on the canvas because we only have print statements. So if I drag this up, 75, 80, 65, 90, 95, and it gives me all my test scores. Not too bad. All right, that works. I can grab those test scores, not a big deal. The next thing is, what if we wanted to add all the test scores up to get a total? Let's try that. So use a loop to add up all the test scores. Okay, so first thing I would need is another variable up here on line 5. How about total? All right, and total is going to be 0 because when I start this code again, I've not typed in any test scores, so everything's 0. All right, so this time I will say for item in test scores. Item is just a temporary variable that I've created. This can be X, this can be puppy dogs, it doesn't matter, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say total equals total plus item, all right? And then when that's done, I'll say print the total of all your scores is total. All right, run it. Let's enter my test scores. 75 on that first test and 80 on the next test. I dropped off, I got a 65 on the next one. Then I got a 90 and then finally a 95. Now it throws an error, line 18. And it says total equals total plus item, unsupported operand for int and string. In order to add these numbers together, my data has to be integers or floats, okay? The problem is up on line 9, when we did score equals app.get text input, Python by default, whenever you ask it for input, will store it as a string. So when we were typing in those test scores, 75, 80, 65, 90, those are not numbers. They have no numeric value. It's just the character 7 and the character 5, the character 8, the character 0. If we want to do math with those, we need to convert score on line 9 into an integer. Okay, so let's, right below line 9, let's create a new line 10 here. We're going to say score equals int score. And that tells the computer to take the information because, again, Python by default will save it as an integer, as a string. We want to convert it to an integer. So line 10 is doing that. Let's run. Let's again type in our score. It's 75, then 80. I dropped off. I got a 65. Then I went up. I got that 95. And then on the last one, I got a 90. Again, nothing will appear on the text because all I have is print statements. Let's go ahead and move this up. And it did go ahead and create a score. Now, again, if that number is too high, let's do some numbers that make some sense to us. How about 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? Well, we can do the math, and we do, in fact, see that the math was done for us. So whenever you want to work with math, you want to do numbers, you want to crunch numbers, you have to remember that Python stores any input as a string, and then you need to convert it to an integer or a float, depending on what you want to do. Hope that helped out. Best of luck to you.